Yeah, one of the case, I keep talking about undercover work, and undercover work is just so valuable in so many ways. And as I said, you can do deep or you can do just real basic, low level undercover work. There was a case, I was in Hollywood, I had my office in the Hollywood Hills, and a celebrity came to me, a pretty big one, A-name celebrity. His bodyguard came to me, excuse me, he didn't, but his bodyguard came to me. And he told me a story about a gentleman in the Heartland of the United States. And he had a company, huge company, the second or third largest employer in the entire state. And there was a hit out on this man. And so he asked me if I wanted to meet with him. We all got together. And this man explained to me that he was divorced and his wife had married another gentleman and a younger gentleman, and he had a daughter with his ex-wife, and the daughter was the only child. So if anything happened to the man who owned the huge business, everything would go to his daughter. And the new husband, allegedly, according to what he was telling me, the new husband was planning a hit on him. He didn't tell me exactly how he knew, but he swore that he knew the guy was going to have him murdered. Then the inheritance, a monstrous inheritance, billions of dollars, would have gone to the daughter. So he asked me if there was any way I could get involved and if there was anything I could do. And I told him, I got all the facts from him. We were in a bar, and I wrote down all the facts, and I said, give me, a day, let me go home and think about it and talk to my team. So I went home and thought about it a lot, talked to my guys, and talked to my wife at that time. And we figured out a way that we could get involved and, number one, find out if the hit was true, and number two, stop it from happening. So I met again with him. I told him to meet me the following day, and I sat down with him, and I said, okay, I know what I'm gonna do. And he said, what? I said, well, I'm gonna go to that state in the Heartland on the Mississippi River, and I'm gonna get him to hire me to kill you. And he raised his eyebrows, and he said, you're gonna do what? I said, I'm going to go get him to hire me or one of my men to kill you. And that way we'll find out. I mean, he's going to have to start the conversation and bring this up to us. So I said, it's going to take a long time. It'll take months, and it's going to have to really be set down. The cover has to be set down. And in this particular state, there were a couple of movies being made. And I knew the co-star, a couple of the co-stars in one of the movies. And that sort of gave me an in that state in the movie business. And I already had one in Hollywood. So I went there. I didn't go under my real name. And now, remember, back then there were no internet, there was no Facebook. So it's not like you can go on Google or Facebook and put somebody's name in it and see who they are. And my undercover people today have no Facebook. They don't have anything as a detective on, Joe Blow, and I'm a private detective, but I work undercover. That would be idiotic. So my undercover people, I don't do undercover now, obviously, because I'm too well known and it's too easy to check out who I am. But back in those days, that didn't exist. They often said that the truth goes around the world by horse and buggy, and a lie goes around like a telegram. So I went there under a different name, and had the whole backup for Hollywood, the whole movie company and everything, and I had stars that were backing me up. And so my plan was to put a movie together that we were going to shoot in that state and use the actors and actresses from the other movies that were being done there to back up who I was and the fact that I was doing this movie. And usually in the states, especially the tri-states, and you get back in the Midwest and stuff, anything to do with a movie, people want to be around it. So my plan was we went out, we did surveillance, found out the house, and found out when they were home on a weekend, so that this was summertime and it's hot, and usually the front door is going to be open, the screen door. And so we pulled up in front of the house in a limousine, and I had a viewfinder around my neck. There was a couple of us, and this house had some very unusual buildings on the property. It was a large piece of property, and they were unusual enough for us to want to film there. And so I stood across the street and looked and did viewfinding things, and we're out there taking photographs and stuff. And if you're in a Midwest a Midwest state, and you see a limousine out in the middle of nowhere, right, where these farms are, you see the stretched limousine across the street from your house, and they're taking photographs. What are you going to do? You're going to go out there, you're going to go across the street, and you're going to find out who they are, because not that many stretched limos come out to these farm areas. So that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly what he did. He came across and asked questions. That's how I got the contact. But even before that, a couple of days before that, we were in the hotel, and my wife, who was a private investigator, also was with me. And we're in the hotel, and we were talking about the movie that we were going to do. And I knew I picked the fanciest hotel in the state on the Mississippi River. And I knew that if I started talking about the movies that we were going to make, that it would wind up in the newspaper there, because this is where all the people from the other movies hung out at. So it took 2 days for a newspaper reporter to come up to us and ask what I was doing, and I started telling him, and of course he's writing stuff down. He said, well, can I do an interview? I said, yeah, sure, of course. Now again, I have everything set up in Hollywood. I have cards. If anybody gets my card, they call that phone number. A real secretary answers that phone number that really is a movie company, and will vouch for who I am and just say that I'm out of state on location hunting. So the second day we did the article and the interview and stuff. So about 2 days later, on the front page of this paper is another movie being shot in this city, and huge story on it. So now my cover, my backstory and my cover of who I am and what I'm doing is just been cemented in gold. It's on the headline of the local newspaper that I'm there making the movie. So when that weekend, when we're out across the street from this guy's house, they come out and I say, we're gonna do locations, we're picking out the locations for a movie, etc., etc. This guy, of course, he had read the newspaper, and yeah, I knew about that, I heard about that. So I used that to form a friendship with these people and get to know them. I got to know the daughter, I got to know their friends. We had parties, went drinking, we all hung out together. Now this is for me to find out about them. And when you do undercover, you have to be careful not to entrap somebody. The DeLorean, if anybody remembers the DeLorean case, the car, the DeLorean, it was a cocaine thing that they got him caught up in. But everybody in the room was an FBI agent or an undercover agent, a DEA agent, except for John DeLorean, the president of the motor company. And it wound up, there was entrapment. I mean, they suggested the drugs, they suggested everything. I don't suggest anything. When we do undercover work, we don't bring up anything. We don't do anything near entrapment. We don't do drugs with anybody, nothing. All I do is present a situation. I dangle a couple of carrots. And if the person, the subject, takes a bite out of one of those carrots, it's not me that's suggesting it or anything else. So I worked it around after many months of this, of becoming close to them and getting the location and photographs of actors. I went on the other sets, got pictures of the actors, put in frames, put them in this hotel room. We set up the hotel hugely that this producer was coming out. We had him change the carpets in the room because we were going to make this big movie out there. So while I become friends with this guy, all of them, I started talking about the people that backed the movie. And they were from, let's say, Chicago, the East Coast. And it was Louis, the guys with the bent noses. And so they were the financiers. I didn't say that it was a mob or anything, but it was kind of obvious that that's where the money was coming from. So then, just like central casting, I got a couple of agents who looked like thugs from the East Coast with the accent and everything, and flew them out to this state and had them with me and introduced them as the financiers of the movie. And I knew if I presented everybody correctly, it would be, people would assume, got to be careful assuming things, people would assume that these were mobsters. And so if you're becoming good friends with somebody and they're tied in with mobsters, and if you want to have somebody killed, you want to do something like that, who are you going to run to? Who are you going to call? You're going to ask that new friend of yours about these East Coast mobsters. And that was the whole plan, to see if he would request help from me or anything. And after several months, he did. He set it up so that, oh God, again, I have to be careful with some of these things. He set it up in such a way, he took me out for a drive. And we went out into this field way out onto the farm, and he turned the engine off and sat there and started to tell me about this guy and how much money he had, and was suggesting if anything happened to him that he would inherit a fortune and he could get into the movie business. And I didn't say that all of our financing, I think I left a gap for our financing, that there was, somebody else could still come in. And he talked about all this money that he would make if this guy had an accident or anything happened to him. And we worked it up all the way up to where I was going to have him hire one of my guys to do this hit. But when it really came down to it, and I presented everything to him and told him what was going to happen and how they could do it, I could literally tell as we were getting closer and closer to actually saying that it's going to cost this much money to have this person killed. I could tell that he was he was just not 100% there. And I think that's what happened with DeLorean, that he didn't want to do a drug deal, but these guys pushed him into it. And instead of doing that, I stayed way back and I really let him know. I kept repeating it to him and how serious it was. And towards the end, he backed out of it. He said, look, I can't do this. And that's really what I wanted to find out. That was my objective. My objective was not to go there and commit him to a hit murder. Had he said that he wanted to do it, we would have set it up. I would have had a hit, quote unquote, come down. We would have put makeup, fake blood on my client, taken photographs, gone back to the tri-states and showed this guy the photograph, collected, got half up, half got the money then, and he literally would be looking at photographs that he thought this guy was dead. But it didn't go. He couldn't do it. He didn't want to do it. And I was able to come back and honestly tell my client that, yeah, the guy thought about it. He probably talked about it. But he is not going to go through with it. He just doesn't have the gut to go all the way through with the thing. However, what did happen that got me in trouble was we were on islands in the Mississippi, and we would go on boats, and we'd all they have the ferries with the rotator, the motors in the back, and the water things that go around like that. I'm not from there, so I can't remember what they're called. But we would go up and down the Mississippi, and these guys had speedboats, and we spent a lot of time on small islands in the Mississippi, just partying, just like going to the beach, someplace. Only these islands, you could drink and party and play loud music and do anything you wanted. While we were there was a guy that he was talking to, the guy that lived up there, the subject of the investigation. So the guy he was talking to, and I managed to take a photograph. And when you're taking pictures, of course we're there, we're on location, doing location hunting. We got cameras like crazy. We're taking photographs of everything. And you make like you're taking a photograph of this person or this thing here or over here, and you don't shoot them, you shoot right over their shoulder and zoom in on exactly what you really want to take the picture of. So this guy was talking to looked like a biker, or he just looked like a badass. And so I got a photograph of him with a zoom, and I then sent that photo. I had it developed immediately and sent it to somebody in Florida that I knew that was in that business and knew a lot of the mob guys and knew a lot of the biker guys. And I sent him a picture, and whatever I had said on the back about recognizing this guy, it was coded, but I guess there was an obviousness to it. Well, the guy I sent the photograph to got arrested literally on his way to commit a crime. And he had a briefcase with him. And in the briefcase is the photograph that I had sent him, asking him if he recognized this guy as a hitman. So when the police arrested this real hit guy in Florida, they got everything, confiscated all the stuff, went through it, and this photograph led back to me. And that started a cascade of like dominoes later on that affected me. And I wound up having a raid in my home, and it was just a mess. But but I was able to sue the Los Angeles Police Department, and I got a settlement from them. I had done nothing, but again, they assumed. So there were a couple of people in this thing that assumed things, and when you assume something, you make an ass out of you and an ass out of me. But so later it kind of pissed backwards on me, but I was able to solve that case and prove to my client that this guy really wasn't going to kill him. About a year and a half later, these people are in court over a custody hearing for that child, for that little girl. And during the custody hearing, the investigation that we did came out. And it came out that he wasn't going to do anything. It was all good on his side. But my phone rang in Hollywood one day, about a year and a half later, and it was the guy and his wife on the phone. And they were screaming at me. And you son of a bitch, we trusted you. Now, I hadn't seen them since we had left the tri-state. I hadn't seen them or talked to them in a year. Maybe I talked to them for like 3 months after we left there. And the movie fell through, it didn't happen, and it's easy to get out of those things. But these guys called and they were really pissed off. And I said, hey, whoa, wait a minute. I saved your life. I knew you didn't want to do it. I could tell when I was with you. I could tell that you weren't committed to it. And I didn't try to trap you in it. Nothing. I just let it roll as exactly it rolled. And my report, which you can look at in the court case, says exactly that you were not actually, that you were just talking, mouthing off, and trying to be a big man. But you didn't get in any trouble at all because I was completely honest. So in undercover cases, when you go into undercover cases like we do, there are things that sometimes it will piss backwards on you that you never even expected it to. So that was another close call. But I ended the case. I satisfied my client. He didn't get killed. And I guess I just, lost those two friends. But nobody got arrested, and I think it turned out good all the way around. Undercover works all kinds of ways.